The vast expanse of the open sea stretched before Captain Serena Carter as she stood at the helm of the Seawolf, the salty wind whipping through her short hair. It had been years since she left the military, but the instincts she had honed during her time as a Naval Special Forces officer never faded. Now, she and her crew were fishermen, or at least, that was the image they presented to the world. But the Seawolf was far from an ordinary fishing boat. Its outwardly rugged appearance masked state-of-the-art modifications, reinforced hull plating, hidden weapons compartments, and a sophisticated radar system designed to detect threats long before they became visible. Serena had turned the Seawolf into a fortress on water, a necessity when navigating these treacherous waters ruled by cartel violence and unchecked corruption. Matthew Graves, her second-in-command, approached the wheelhouse. "Something's off," he said in his steady, measured tone. Javier spotted a fast-moving vessel on the radar. No identification, no fishing gear. Serena's sharp eyes scanned the horizon, her fingers tightening on the throttle. She had spent enough time on the water to know when something wasn't right. Could be patrol boats. Coast Guard. Matthew shook his head. Not in these waters. More likely a cartel. And if they're coming this close, they're not here for a friendly chat. Serena exhaled slowly, the tension settling in her chest. The Mexican cartel had been extending its influence across the region, and independent fishermen were either forced into smuggling or eliminated. The Seawolf had stayed under the radar, until now. "Hannah, Marco, to positions," Serena ordered through the ship's radio. "Javier, keep eyes on that contact. If they get within 2 miles, we treat them as hostile." On the deck below, Marco Velasquez, their explosive specialist, adjusted his grip on a makeshift sea mine, the device small but powerful enough to cripple a pursuit. Javier Delgado, the youngest member of the crew, moved swiftly to adjust the ship's electronic countermeasures. Then, the call came through. A harsh voice crackled over the radio, speaking in Spanish. "Fishing boat, shut down your engines, and prepare to be boarded." Serena exchanged a glance with Matthew. Their cover was blown. "So much for a quiet night," she muttered, gripping the wheel. Time to show them they picked the wrong target. As the cartel speedboats drew closer, their floodlights sweeping over the Seawolf, Serena counted at least 4 vessels, each manned by heavily armed men. Their leader, Santiago Herrera, was a ruthless enforcer known for his brutal tactics. If he was here personally, that meant the cartel was serious. "They have automatic weapons," Matthew reported. "Likely .50 caliber mounts on the front boats." Serena nodded. "Then we can't let them get close." She slammed the throttle forward, the Seawolf lurching ahead, cutting a sharp arc through the water. The cartel boats adjusted, trying to box them in. Marco now. With a grin, Marco triggered the sea mine. A muffled explosion erupted behind them, sending one of the cartel boats into chaos. The shockwave rocked the remaining vessels, throwing their gunners off balance. Hannah Nakamura, the Seawolf sniper, had already taken position atop the wheelhouse. As one of the gunners regained his stance, she fired a single shot. The man collapsed, his rifle slipping into the ocean. The remaining cartel boats adjusted course, one breaking off to flank them from the starboard side. Serena's mind raced. They were outnumbered, but not outmaneuvered. "Javier, deploy countermeasures," she ordered. Javier flipped a switch, releasing a thick cloud of dense, artificial fog from the ship's stern. The pursuing boats lost visibility, and their spotlights rendered useless. Serena seized the moment, veering sharply toward a narrow passage between jagged reefs, an area only a skilled navigator could traverse. The Seawolf sliced through the dangerous waters, but the cartel boats weren't as lucky. One clipped the reef, its hull tearing open as water flooded in. The remaining 2, though slowed, adjusted their pursuit. Serena took a deep breath. "We've bought time, but they'll be back. And they won't be as reckless next time," Matthew agreed. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. Serena and her crew didn't waste a moment. They needed to disappear before Herrera's reinforcements arrived. They cut through a hidden fishing route known only to locals, slipping away into the dark waters. Once safe, the crew took stock of their situation. The Seawolf had sustained minor damage, but nothing Marco couldn't repair. Javier was shaken but unharmed. Hannah was already cleaning her rifle, her expression unreadable. Matthew broke the silence. "They knew your name, Serena. This wasn't random. They were looking for you." Serena's jaw tightened. Which means we're in deeper than we thought. Marco exhaled sharply. If they report back to Salazar, he'll send everything he has. Rodrigo Salazar was the mastermind behind the cartel's maritime operations. A man who ruled with an iron fist and crushed anyone who opposed him. If he saw them as a threat, he would not rest until they were eliminated. Serena stared out at the horizon. They had two choices: run and keep fighting small battles, or strike first. She turned back to her crew. We need information. We need allies. We're not just going to survive this. We're going to take the fight to them. Hannah nodded. Then we start with someone who hates Salazar as much as we do. Serena's mind was already made up. Raul Cortez. A former smuggler turned informant, Cortez knew the cartel's operations better than anyone. If they could convince him to help, they might stand a chance at taking Salazar down. Serena stepped back to the helm. Set course. We're going to pay him a visit. As the Seawolf disappeared into the night, the cartel's hunt had only just begun. The Seawolf cut through the dark waters like a ghost, heading toward a remote cove where Raul Cortez was rumored to be hiding. Serena had dealt with him before, an opportunist, always looking for the best deal. If they could offer him something better than what the cartel was paying, he might be willing to help. We're getting close, Matthew said, his eyes scanning the approaching shoreline through night vision binoculars. No movement yet. Hannah, cover us from the deck, Serena ordered. Javier, kill the engines once we're in range. Marco, stay sharp. If this goes south, we need to be ready. The Seawolf glided silently into the cove, hidden beneath a cliffside. A small fire flickered near the tree line, illuminating the outline of a figure waiting for them. Serena grabbed her rifle and disembarked with Matthew at her side. The air smelled of salt and damp wood as they made their way toward the fire. Cortez, Serena called out. We need to talk. A low chuckle came from the shadows. Captain Carter, I was wondering when you'd show up. Raul Cortez stepped into the light, a smirk on his weathered face. His thin frame and unshaven beard made him look like a man who had seen too many battles and lost most of them. What do you want? He asked. If you're looking for a way out of this mess, you're in the wrong place. Salazar already put a bounty on your head. Then you know we're serious, Serena said. And we're not running. We need intel. We want Salazar's operations. Cortez raised an eyebrow. That's suicide. Not if we strike first, Matthew added. We know Salazar is expanding into bioenhancement smuggling. We need locations, supply routes, anything. Cortez hesitated, glancing toward the jungle as if expecting someone to be listening. I might know something, he finally said. But information isn't free. Serena folded her arms. What do you want? Protection, Cortez said without hesitation. You help me disappear, I'll give you everything you need. Serena exchanged a glance with Matthew. It was a risk. Cortez was known for double-crossing his allies. But they needed his intel. Fine, Serena said. But if you betray us? Cortez held up a hand. You'll kill me. I know. Serena nodded. Then start talking. Back on the Seawolf, Cortez laid out a map of the coastline, marking key cartel strongholds and supply hubs. Salazar's main operation is here. He pointed to an isolated island. It's heavily fortified. Weapons, drugs, and even experimental testing. It's where he's moving his new product. What kind of product? Hannah asked from her sniper perch. Cortez hesitated. Something unnatural. The cartel has been working with rogue scientists, testing enhancements on soldiers. They call them revenants. Matthew's expression darkened. Genetic modifications? Stronger, faster, deadlier, Cortez confirmed. I saw one take a full magazine to the chest and keep coming. If Salazar starts mass-producing them, no one can stop him. Serena absorbed the information. This wasn't just a cartel war. If Salazar succeeded, he could create an unstoppable army. Then we hit them before that happens, she said. We gather weapons, plan our attack, and take Salazar down. Cortez sighed. You're crazier than I thought. But count me in. The Seawolf crew had their mission, and the real war was about to begin. The Seawolf crew had no time to waste. With Cortez's intel in hand, they set course towards Salazar's island fortress. It was a suicide mission, but waiting meant giving the cartel more time to perfect their monstrous creations. We'll need a tactical approach, Matthew said, studying the map. Going in guns blazing will get us all killed. Serena nodded. We hit them where they're weakest. supply routes, communications, power grid. Cripple the island before we storm it. Javier leaned over the table. I can jam their signals remotely, but once we're in range, they'll know something's up. We need a backup escape plan. Marco smirked. Who said anything about escaping? We finish what we start. Serena glanced at Hannah, who was loading her rifle. You ready? Hannah gave a curt nod. Always. They spent the next several hours preparing weapon checks, explosives, and a final rundown of their infiltration plan. By nightfall, they were closing in on their target. The Seawolf approached the island under the cover of darkness, engines barely making a whisper against the rolling waves. The moon was obscured by clouds, a perfect night for an ambush. Serena and her team deployed in 2 inflatable boats, paddling toward the rocky shore. As they neared the island, the imposing silhouette of the Cartel compound loomed above them, towering watchtowers, spotlights sweeping the jungle, and armed patrols. Javier, status on comms. Serena whispered. Scrambling their frequencies now, he responded. They'll think they're having equipment failures. Serena signaled for the team to move. They slipped onto the shore undetected, blending into the dense foliage. The plan was simple. Plant explosives at key infrastructure points, weaken the enemy, and then strike hard. But as they navigated through the jungle, a faint growl stopped them in their tracks. Something unnatural was lurking in the darkness. A shadow moved between the trees, too fast for a normal human. Hannah was the first to react, raising her rifle. Movement. East side. A guttural snarl echoed through the night, followed by a blur of motion. Before Serena could react, one of Salazar's enhanced soldiers lunged from the darkness, tackling Marco to the ground. Marco struggled, but the creature was unnaturally strong. Its skin was mottled with scars, its eyes empty and unfeeling. He fired point-blank into its chest. No effect. Aim for the head, Serena shouted. Hannah took the shot. The bullet tore through the creature's skull, and it collapsed instantly. What the hell was that? Javier gasped. Cortez, who had seen them before, was grim. A revenant. Salazar's experiment works. Then we just confirmed our worst fears, Serena muttered. Let's finish this. The Seawolf crew pushed forward, knowing they weren't just fighting a cartel anymore. They were fighting monsters. The jungle felt alive with danger, every shadow a potential threat. The team moved in formation, scanning their surroundings for more revenants. The gunshot had likely alerted the compound, and time was running out. Serena motioned for the team to move toward the main compound. We stick to the plan. Set the explosives, disable their infrastructure, and extract. They reached the perimeter fence, where Marco worked quickly to cut through the wires. Javier placed a jamming device on a control panel, silencing alarms before they could activate. As they advanced, another snarl ripped through the air. This time, 3 revenants emerged from the jungle, their unnatural speed sending chills down Serena's spine. Take them down, she ordered. Hannah fired first, dropping one with a clean headshot, but the others kept coming. Marco unleashed a grenade, the explosion sending one flying backward. The third lunged at Matthew, its razor-sharp nails slashing across his vest. He gritted his teeth, stabbing it repeatedly before Serena finished it with a bullet to the head. We need to move, Javier shouted. The compound's main entrance loomed ahead, guarded by cartel soldiers who had finally realized they were under attack. Gunfire erupted, and the team took cover behind a stack of cargo containers. Marco, explosives, Serena called. Marco planted charges on the main power grid. Set. 30 seconds. Fall back to the exfil point, Serena ordered. They ran as explosions ripped through the compound, plunging it into darkness. The remaining guards scrambled, firing blindly as the Seawolf crew made their escape. As they neared the shore, a low growl echoed behind them. One last revenant, larger than the others, blocked their path. Serena raised her rifle. Everyone focus fire. We end this now. The creature roared, charging at them as the team opened fire. The bullets tore into the revenant, but it kept coming, relentless in its pursuit. Marco launched another grenade, and the explosion sent it stumbling. Hannah, now, Serena shouted. Hannah took careful aim and fired a single shot into the creature's skull. It dropped, twitching before going still. Breathing heavily, Serena checked on her team. Matthew was injured, but still standing. They had survived the worst of it, for now. Back to the Seawolf, she ordered. They sprinted to the inflatable boats, pushing off just as cartel reinforcements arrived at the shore. The enemy opened fire, but the darkness and distance worked in their favor. Within minutes, they were back aboard the Seawolf, speeding away from the burning island. Javier slumped against the console, exhausted. We did it. Serena exhaled, watching the island disappear into the horizon. Not yet. Salazar's still out there. And if he's making more revenants, this is just the beginning. Matthew wiped blood from his face. Then we finish what we started. Serena nodded. Next time, we take the fight to him. The Seawolf cut through the waves, carrying them toward their next battle. The Seawolf powered through the open ocean, the crew silent as they processed what had just happened. The battle had taken its toll. Bruises, blood, and exhaustion weighed heavy on them. But the war was far from over. Serena stood at the helm, her hands gripping the controls tightly. She knew they had dealt a blow to Salazar, but he was still out there, and worse, he would now be hunting them. They needed reinforcements, allies who could stand against a force as powerful as the cartel and its abominations. Where do we go from here? Javier asked, rubbing his sore shoulder. Serena turned to him. We need more firepower. We need people who hate Salazar as much as we do. Matthew nodded. There's a mercenary group operating out of Bullies. I fought alongside their leader, Callum Rourke, years ago. If he's still in the game, he might be willing to help. Good, Serena said. Set course for Bullies. It's time we stop running and start fighting back. The docks of Bullies were alive with activity, the scent of salt and diesel mixing in the air. The Seawolf pulled into a secluded berth, its crew disembarking cautiously. This place was neutral ground, a haven for smugglers, mercenaries, and ex-military operatives looking for work. Serena led the way, weaving through the crowded market until they reached a rundown bar at the edge of the docks. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with cigar smoke and hushed conversations. A group of men sat in a booth at the back, their leader unmistakable. Callum Rourke was a broad-shouldered man with graying hair and a scar running down the side of his face. His eyes, sharp and assessing, locked onto Serena as she approached. Serena Carter, Rourke said, leaning back in his seat. Didn't think I'd see you again. I need your help, Serena said without hesitation. We're going after Salazar. Rourke let out a low chuckle. Salazar's got half the region under his thumb. What makes you think you can take him down? Because we've already started, Matthew interjected. We took out one of his main operations, and now he wants us dead. Rourke studied them for a moment before nodding slowly. I've lost good men to Salazar. If you're serious about this, we're in. But we don't fight for free. Serena pulled out a flash drive and slid it across the table. Intel on a hidden cartel armory. Weapons, cash, everything you need. Help us, and it's yours. Rourke smirked. Now you're speaking my language. You've got a deal. With Rourke and his mercenaries on board, the Seawolf crew began preparing for their next move. They spent days gathering supplies, weapons, and intelligence, mapping out their strike on Salazar's headquarters. He's holed up in a fortress, Rourke explained, pointing at an aerial image of the compound. Multiple entry points, heavy security, and worst of all, those revenant bastards. Serena studied the map. We take out the power grid first. Blind them. Then we hit them hard before they can regroup. Hannah adjusted her sniper scope. I'll set up on this ridge. If they try to reinforce, they won't make it. Javier checked the explosives. And we make sure they don't have a base to return to. Marco grinned. Finally, a plan I can get behind. Serena looked around at her crew. This is it. We end this. No more running. They nodded in unison, ready for the battle ahead. The night was eerily quiet as the Seawolf crew and Rourke's mercenaries approached Salazar's compound. The power grid was the first target. Javier's EMP detonated with a dull hum, plunging the facility into darkness. Then, the attack began. Hannah fired the first shot, taking down a sentry. The others followed, moving swiftly through the compound, taking out guards and planting explosives. The alarms wailed, but it was too late. Explosions rocked the base as the team fought their way through, clearing rooms and corridors. In the chaos, Serena locked eyes with Salazar, who stood at the far end of the courtyard. It ends tonight, she growled. Salazar sneered, raising a weapon, but before he could fire, Serena pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, and Salazar collapsed, his reign of terror finally over. The team sprinted toward the extraction point as the final charges detonated. The compound erupted in flames, signaling the end of an era. The Seawolf crew stood on the deck, watching the distant glow of the burning fortress. They had won, but at a cost. So what now? Marco asked. Serena took a deep breath. We keep going. There are more like Salazar out there. People who think they can control the seas. We remind them that they can't. Matthew smiled. Then I guess we're just getting started. The Seawolf cut through the waves, sailing toward its next adventure. The battle was over, but the war had just begun.